Exam stress in India is so big that every year the Prime Minister comes and delivers a talk before the board exam, right? Which the first time it happened, I felt very hurt suddenly. I was like, oh, somebody understands at that level that I am struggling.
The recent report of NCERT says nearly 80% of the children who are between the age group of 13 to 19 years are facing anxiety because of this exam patterns.
Stress is like a balloon that is being pumped with air. And that stress causes it to increase in size, which gives us a lot of pleasure when you're playing with the balloons and children are very happy with it. But also that if there is too much of air pumped in, then the balloon bursts at the point that it is the weakest. Hello and welcome to the podcast hosted by the JIBS Institute of Behavioral Sciences. I'm your host for the podcast. My name is Bhaskar. Today we're going to discuss about exam stress, particularly why it exists, why is it such a big deal, and how should one cope with exam stress. I'm joined by my colleague Dr. Angel Selvaraj, who is also an assistant professor at the JIBS Institute of Behavioral Sciences. She has extensive expertise in this area. She's worked with children, she's worked with rehabilitation clients, she's worked with people who deal with stress at a daily level. She's a counselor. So I don't think there's a better person to sort of explain to us about how we deal with exam stress and why it exists in the first place, right? So welcome, Angel. It's good to have you here.
Hi Bhaskar, it's good to be here.
I think we should start by discussing about stress directly. Yes. I once heard a very interesting anecdote for stress. I don't remember where I heard it from, but it was something to do with a balloon, right? The person mentioned that stress is like a balloon that is being pumped with air, and that stress causes it to increase in size, which gives us a lot of pleasure when you're playing with the balloons and children are very happy with it. But also that if there is too much of air pumped in, then the balloon bursts at the point that it is the weakest, right? That's a very interesting way to look at stress. Do you agree with that? What do you think? How do you explain stress?
Stress is a part of life. Not all the stress are like distressing, and sometimes we have a positive stress called eustress, and it is always when we have some kind of stress within us, it motivates us to work towards it. It helps us to move forward in our life, and the extent how we experience stress or how we perceive stress, that matters a lot. And nowadays people in this competitive world are totally facing stress everywhere. Wherever we interact with people, it is a common word: stress. I am stressed. Children tell that I am stressed. Financial stress, marital stress, exam stress, everywhere people talk about stress only.
So in that way, although people do talk about stress, they are not looking at stress in the whole continuum that you have explained, right? They're not looking at stress in terms of its positive aspects also. They're primarily focusing on stress as a problematic, extreme, can't deal with this kind of situation. Is that right?
Yes, most of the time. They think like I'm in a stressful situation. They assume themselves. Nowadays, no, this is a common term that has become a fancy term. Like if they are not taking it as a challenge to proceed further. Rather, they are taking it as a big thing. Something is happening around me, and since there has been a lot of options to quit away telling the word stress, many people don't try to just go inside, explore things, how it happens, how to deal with it. So it's
I can also hear people already in my head saying that when we're listening to this, and they're saying that yes, but sometimes it is hard, right? And because it's hard, we leave. But there are also people who then let's take exam stress for instance, right? There are a lot of people who enjoy the process of studying and giving an exam, and who think that the best of them comes out. They don't view this as stress, correct?
Yes, but nowadays exams, the concept of exams starts right from the nursery classes. Right from 3.5 kids are preparing for their entrance examinations till the people who are even adults, striving very hard to prepare for competitive exams. Right. And now at this point, why stress we have to focus is, this stress is created by the external pressure, not it is internal. It is like lot of expectations from the parents, society, and now we have the attitude or habitual in asking people like, which standard are you studying? How many scores you have got? What are you going to do next? So this like creates some sort of thing that I have to achieve something, and they think that only through exams we can achieve that. And exams are taught like very important aspects of life that only through that I can show myself.
Okay. So if I understand this correctly, I see it as two separate things. Okay. One is that exams are across the world. Across the world, people are giving exams, but in the Indian scenario, there is a amping up of the pressures because of external events and structures, like you're saying. That's one space, right? And that's primarily for someone who's giving competitive exams. Now with the new NEP, etc., class 10 is slightly relaxed, but the class 12, everyone has to do, right?
Yes.
So that everyone goes through. And then after that, when you get into college, then depending on what stream you want to get into, competitive exams are slightly different. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is the exam itself, right? If you isolate everything else and you just focus on the exam, the event that I have to give an exam, I have to write about what I have studied, and then I will get graded on this, whether I know or not. That's the idea. That event is not stressful, right? If you take away everything else from it.
See, sometimes the goal of the stress is not set by the individual.
Okay.
Or it is not depending on the learning style of how the individual want to present his abilities. Right. It is restricted to one mode, that everybody have to recall something and write it down in a paper. That is the system where people are getting stressed. Sometimes children are answering it very good at when they are asked to give an oral test, or when they are able to perform something or do a practical projects, they are very good at it. But when it comes to recalling some concepts and bringing down to paper, it causes stress in them. So the structure which we have in identifying the potentials of the children or grading the children is the problem here.
So, okay, two things. One is that you're saying the recall is causing stress, right? I'm not sure if recall is causing stress, because, okay, suppose I can't recall, or it's the same thing, right? Someone is good at an oral presentation, someone is not. So if you're not good at it, it's going to cause you stress,
yes,
right? So if you're giving an exam and you're not great at recall, it's going to cause you stress. But someone who's good at oral presentation or recall will do well, right? They are not as stressed, let's imagine. So it's not the event itself then, is it?
No, see, within stress, there are, whenever you go for a stress, I am talking about at school level, it is mandatory to go in for a maths exams, or at higher levels, even business maths, computer, we have to recall some formulas, strategies. So it is very difficult for them, rather to explain it. When it comes for competitive exams, all competitive exams have logical reasoning, where they have to work out some logics. Some children are not interested and not good at it also. But they are under pressure, like, I am good at it, but in order to get into a good source or a good exposure, I have to cross through this gate of exam.
So then it's still the outcome then.
Yes.
It's not the process of the exam itself or the type of exam. It's still what that exam means in terms of what will happen, that is causing me stress, right?
Yes.
The source is the outcome. Whether I will do well or not. And if I don't do well, then I don't get XYZ.
Yes.
Right? So now, then I think you made a very important point earlier about now we come to the second part of it, right? Which is that the structure is like that. Very recently I came to know something very interesting. I was talking to someone who's given the UPSC and is an officer in the civil services, and I was asking them about how do promotions happen in the civil services, right? And apparently it's based on the number of years, your seniority, and your rank in the UPSC exam. So you might have joined UPSC at 25, and then at the age of 45 or 50, you're still being judged based on your entrance exam score, right? Which was absurd. I couldn't believe it as an academician, someone who gives exams and tests people. It was mind-blowing, right? So I understand where you're coming from, saying that outcome becomes very, very important, and that structure. Do you think only competitive exams then are the place where stress is heightened, or is it even, say, in standard 7 and 8 where the government mandates that you have to pass this too?
See, the recent report of NCRT says, it was released in 2022, and it says nearly 80% of the children who are between the age group of 13 to 19 years are facing anxiety, symptoms of anxiety because of these exam patterns. And study related stress. And this causes social isolation also sometimes in schools. Teachers neglect the students who are not performing well, and they don't get recognition even from the parents as well as from their friends. So now they are in a situation that this is something big that will give me some reputation. So I am again and again worried about something which I am not able to do. And people or myself, I set unrealistic goals for myself. I'll be able to do something, I'll be good at something, but people put on me like lot of pressure and set like I will be able to perform at 70%, but they give 85, 90 as my target, and constantly I am asked to work. And now the quality is compromised with the quantity. I am asked to sit for 4 hours, sit and study, but I am just literally tired after studying for half an hour. That my interest is not there. So even though I put so much time in that, again my routine is disturbed, my sleep is disturbed, my eating habits are disturbed. So again it ultimately leads to depression in the children, some kind of insomnia, and I am just totally blurred out, fucked out, like what's happening around me.
Yeah, even the Prime Minister, like exam stress in India is so big that every other Prime Minister comes and delivers a talk before the board exam, right? which the first time it happened, I felt very hurt suddenly. I was like, oh, somebody understands at that level that I am struggling. But yeah, of course, now that's one way that like the Prime Minister will come and speak about it, you listen. That's one way to deal with it, right, and cope. What are other ways in which, suppose a child is listening, right, and they're in school or they're giving a competitive exam, how do they cope other than this? What are the other measures that you could suggest?
The first thing I would suggest is change your perspective. Exams are a part of life. They are not a final destiny. And exams are not alone going to decide your worth or decide your fate for life. It is like, yes, I am going to give my best. Whatever comes, I am ready to accept. If you want to get the best, just start working right from the beginning day. Have your own plans, your own schedules, and start learning from and get consultations, guidelines. And if you are worried about the time management, you have to often give some exams, test, online quiz, something to just organize your time. And later on, like, go for the exams. Once you are done with the exams, stop thinking about it. Whatever comes, develop the guts to face that.
But that's the thing, no? Like I think people will know this, right? And they'll understand that the change in perspective is necessary. They themselves will viscerally be feeling. I know children and I know my friends when we were in school, they knew that this was not for them, right? Academics was not for them, and they were not able to recall, or they didn't want to recall, whatever the reasons are. I think changing perspective is a very hard thing because of all the pressures we spoke about. Eventually you are dependent on your parents, and if you don't do well in exam, then parents dangle a lot of carrots, right? That, oh, if you do well, I'll give you this gift or this and that, right? And then they don't get that creates more disappointment, which creates more stress, which creates more, and it becomes very turbulent. Apart from say asking someone to change their perspective, suppose we imagine that it's very hard for someone to have that, right? Then what do you do if you're in that situation and now you need to cope?
Being smart. See, I always recommend, no, when children are like having difficulties in learning, recalling, I just don't put yourself that I have to read all the lessons, I have to finish the complete portions. Just be smart, like what are frequently asked questions, let them get thorough with that, or some topics which is of their own interest, they can just focus on that topics. So it is good to start gradually. Now you are in the process of studying for the exams, just start with like simple one-word answers, simple question answers, first, which is easy for you. Let us target on that slowly, and slowly you develop an interest, and have some little breaks, have fun in between when you study, so that you don't get overwhelmed with the concepts which are learning. Slowly try, or split up the questions into halves, study each questions differently, and ask the experts guidance to just simplify the answers and give for you. And it is more good to discuss with the friends and learn, because with a peer group, no, will teach the children in their level. Maybe the experts also talk to their level. The child have difficulty in understanding. When they interact with a peer group and study along with their roommates or friends, and it will be like helpful for them to cope up with.
Parents are definitely not going to like this suggestion because they think that friends will get together and they won't study.
But most of the time it has been proved effective that peer tutoring or peer support initiatives have been proved very
for sure, right? That I studied at a boarding school. There were no parents, teachers. They taught and then they went home. There was no tuition, so all we relied on was each other to explain concepts. And you have fun during that process, but that doesn't mean you don't study. Lots of my friends did well. Lots of them went to IITs and wherever else. So yeah, I get the idea that you get together and you study. One thing that I think children could do is, I used to do this, which I found very interesting as an idea, was I used to before I started reading a chapter, I used to read the questions at the back of the chapter. right? So that gave me more or less a direction about what I'm looking for in this chapter. Otherwise, what happens is it's almost like there is infinite information, and I'm just reading, and it feels enormous. Whereas if I look at the questions beforehand, then I know what am I expecting, what am I looking at, and then when I went back to reading the book, I could skip between parts that are not as important in a textbook, because not everything in a textbook is as important. That's, I think, something. Is there any self-regulation techniques that you could tell children to sort of imbibe in their daily routine that would assist them?
So it is good to meditate a few minutes before they start to study. Just sit in a calm way. It's not like to focus and meditate. At least just sit calm without any distractions for some time, and just start learning with that. And even after completing their studies, just sit down calmly and just recall what they have learned, so that they are clear like what they have learned remains constant in them, and it is not to be recalled with memory. One thing is, don't memorize things without understanding. This is again a main problem, because children spend so many hours sitting and memorizing so many things, but when it comes to exams, because of the exam stress, everything gets faded away, and they say that I forgot everything. It is only because they don't learn with understanding. One is interest, then the other thing is understanding.
Anything else, last things that you want to tell the children who are listening to this about their exam stress? Because board exams are actually now coming.
Prepare well. It's in your hands, not other things, or the external source is not going to decide or work for you. It is you who are going to face the situation individually, and you have to decide like how I am going to face it. Just rule out all others. Think of yourself, how I want to achieve, how much score I want to get, how I can work for it. If it is like self-motivated, and if I'm doing it for my happiness or my joy, then I will do it automatically. So I think like just leave out everybody's words, just sit, meditate, think for yourself how this exam is going to contribute for my life. Then I will just decide like I'm going to score this much, I will finish this much topics. You have to be self-motivated to perform well. And if you want to get a high score, then please work hard, and you know like how hard you can work, but don't pressurize yourself. Have good food, take plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables instead of eating junk foods, because again that troubles you physically. And it is good to again have some breaks, rest, go out with your friends, enjoy some days. It is not like I am in board exams, I have to study for 24/7. It's not like.
So that's it for today's podcast, hosted by the Jindal Institute of Behavioral Sciences. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you gained something out of it. And if you did, please like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon. And if you do subscribe, the good thing is that you will see the next podcast pop up on your YouTube feed by JIBS Infotainment. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon.